I just read one of the most feminist books ever. It's a horror book, and it was written by a man. I am finding it difficult to even explain how good this book is, because it starts off with a prologue about his experience growing up with the horror icon Carrie. When he was younger, his mother used to tell him stories about Carrie, but he was told the stories about Carrie in a very sympathetic way, where of course Carrie is raised by a very abusive mother who's very conservative, and she's bullied by her peers, and she doesn't know anything about her own body and the changes that she's going through, and it's all very scary for her and very chaotic. And so he kind of was raised with Carrie as an almost like a sympathetic and almost kind of guardian angel figure. Like he thought of her as kind of a sympathetic figure that he could relate to, and he could kind of have as a guide or a companion. Anyway, he wrote this book as kind of a response to Carrie, but instead of Carrie being a young girl who's struggling with things for the first time, it's a menopausal woman who is dealing with kind of a second puberty, going through changes and disabilities and struggles and doctor's appointments where people don't believe her, and just the general struggles of what it's like to go through menopause and to be a woman in society and to deal with men as a woman in society. So the woman who's the main character is turning 50, and she is dealing with all mental health issues. There's a lot of women supporting women in this book, which I love. I feel like there's not enough of that in literature and society. And then there's also the reality of women hating women and themselves, hating other women and hating their own bodies, and hating the way society perceives their bodies. And also, I felt that the book was incredibly powerful and cathartic. The trajectory really makes you empathize with the main character, and then it definitely takes a very Carrie narrative arc. I wrote this down, but I have no idea how he wrote this book. I think he's just an insanely good writer. His empathy and self-awareness that he showed in his epilogue was so incredibly clear. He talked about his single mother, he talked about the experiences that he's had with women in his life who have not been believed, who have been hurt by society, who have just been ignored by society. And he explains that he writes the patriarchy so well because he is a man who has been raised in a misogynistic society, and that he's basically been trained to write the patriarchy this well. But I think that he doesn't do himself enough credit, because I think you can be raised in a society like that and even be trying to combat your role in that kind of society, but to write about it and to really like analyze it and to analyze yourself and your perspective and the lens that you view the world because you've been raised in that society. I think he just did such a good job seeing past himself and seeing into the experiences of other people in an empathetic way. And I think that's one of the things that makes this book so good. I did not read this book knowing that he was a man. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm not sure how it would have changed the book for me if I'd known that he was a man. I hope that it wouldn't have, because he did such a good job. But I feel like there's a possibility that if I had known it had been written by a man, I would have perceived it differently. That being said, I wouldn't have wanted to, so do the impossible if you read this book and try to go into it with the knowledge that it's just written by a person. But he addresses that also in the epilogue, so if you have the patience to read an epilogue, I would highly recommend listening to his perspective on the writing of this book, both in the prologue and epilogue. I was just very impressed. It was an incredibly good book, and I'm very happy to have read it.